everybody, Blue Dooley, and this is intro 4 or 5 for working on the Grand Hauler. Just haven't had much luck at all this month between work schedules being weird, hitting a roadblock trying to figure out how I want to mount stuff. But I think we finally are to the point where in this video we can get the lift axle completely mounted and working and finally get the truck put back together so we can drive it in May. So let me bring you a little closer. We're going to check out the steering axle after I got some springs mounted onto it. Not 100% sure they're going to stay this way, but I think I'm going to permanently mount them and try it out. And then I might tweak it from there. Here is the steering lift axle kind of mounted up. And while it's not 100% scale, the basic layout is how these axles are set up in the real world. They actually have a shock, coilover shock on each side like this that work against each other to keep the wheels pointing straight and then still allow them to turn freely when the truck makes a turn, or in the case when they're mounted on the trailer, they can swing around with the tail swing of the trailer and then recenter themselves. I do need to adjust. I think I need to make this link new again so it matches this one a little better. But these knockoff Tamiya axles, they have a threaded hole through the top and then one on each side. It's actually threaded all the way through. So these shock screws almost act as a set screw for the ones that hold the link bars on. But yeah, the shocks just kind of work against each other. I tightened this screw down a little too much, so it kind of pinched that C hub together a little bit, so it's a little stiff now, which actually I think is going to work out for the better anyways. Like I said, this is going to be how they're mounted up for a little while. I might put a longer screw in this side and mount them kind of under the axle a little bit. So then, because this part of the steering arm's a little longer, so that'll give the shocks a little more leverage to work against each other. But I think I'm going to run this as it is just to try it out and see if the concept's even going to work or not. We'll get the truck. I was working on a bumper too. I'm not 100% happy with it yet, so I don't know if I'll show you that or not. Truck up on its side. I was hoping to use a standard servo underneath, but there's just not quite enough room underneath the truck for the way I wanted to mount it. So I am going to mount this little micro servo from Savox. It is the SW0250. But it's actually thin enough I can mount it between the drive shaft and the frame vertically like this instead of flat like that. Give me a little more clearance for how I'm going to run the link over to the arm to pull it up and down. So that's actually what we're going to work on next. I need to take this bracket off, paint it. The other one is painted, so I'm going to use it to hold the axle in place, and then we can get to working on the link for the servo to lift the axle. And then I did put a zip tie around this drive shaft just to hold this one that way a little bit so that suspension will flex. So sometimes the easiest solution is the last one you think of. I actually just stuck the little micro servo, to the deck plate, the stock one for the latch that runs the fifth wheel and then has the on-off switch on it depending on how you wire the truck up. So that actually puts the servo arm almost right in line with the shocks. So I'll almost be able to run just one real long screw and lift it and do everything from one mounting point. I can play with the end points a little bit and bring that servo arm up a little more if I need to. But with it down, that should actually give me enough travel because this lift axle is not going to have a ton of up and down travel as it is. So I think that servo placement, while not originally where I wanted it, I think that's actually going to work out better. And then I'll also be hidden a little more because I'm going to put my hydraulic tank and all my plugs for the trailer functions in kind of what looks like a wet kit on a truck. So the power wires running back to run the trailer motor for the belt, the servo lead for the lift axle on the trailers, and then there'll be another servo plug. So if I hook up to Ed's dump trailers like I've done, I can empty the dump trailer too. And it'll look nice and neat. I'm going to 3D design it up. And then once I'm happy with the design, I'll put it on my Thingiverse, much like some of my other things I've done. So I'm going to probably just bend up a little bit of brazing rod for right now, and then see how much that servo needs to move to actually actuate the axle up and down. Mess with some endpoints, so give me a little bit and we'll come back. So the chatter is, of course, the Savox servo, because for whatever reason, they just can't operate silently. I did put in a 0.7 second delay in the servo function, and now that there's nothing on the servo, it's quiet. But that has plenty of travel. I can actually limit the down travel. That gets it off the ground high enough so it's not dragging. It just barely comes up to the carrier bearing there, which is kind of what I want. So once it's fully mounted in the truck, that link will get adjustment. And probably to keep the servo quiet until I come up with a better micro servo that doesn't just whine constantly, I'll probably just drive with the truck with the axle on the ground all the time. But yeah, there's not going to be a ton of weight on that servo, so I'm not sure. This axle and the tires aren't that heavy, but those Savox servos they're just noisy. That's why I wanted to run that Hexfly unit, because the Hexfly units are just so quiet, especially on the shift servo. I can put it in any position and it doesn't make a peep. So if you can, I'm not going to Traxxas because I just don't particularly care for Traxxas electronics or them as a company as a whole. But if you have a suggestion for a small micro servo that is quiet and kind of comparable to that Savox servo, I'd appreciate the suggestion, and I would definitely be worth checking out, because like I said, I don't want servo whine all the time when I'm driving the truck. That's just aggravating. But yeah, plenty of travel. What I did was let me grab it. As soon as I find my needle nose pliers. Come here. So I just basically bent up a hook. That end hooks into the servo, and then that just loops around the bottom of the axle. And that's just to test where the servo is mounted and how long this piece needs to be. I might run like a 24th scale crawler shock just to put a little bit of down pressure on this axle so it just constantly isn't bouncing up and down. But pretty happy with the way that's mounted up now. I did have to run a servo extension lead, which I kind of figured anyways. But once I get that tank mounted and some other things done to the chassis, you're really not going to see the servo, and that's kind of all that matters. There won't be airbags, of course, out here pushing down on the truck, but I do need to figure out a fender just to keep it from kicking rocks up onto the back of the cab. I mean, I've seen plenty of trucks with one of these lift axles that doesn't have any fender at all, and the back of the cab isn't protected at all, so it's not like it's not scale not having a fender, but I think a fender would look a little nicer. And then this kind of setup, like I said, you could run a set of tandems on a axle that'll clear your drive shaft. Same kind of setup. You don't need a ton of travel. And that'd be good for heavy haul. I've seen the the wide front, the 20,000 pound front tires on these steer axles. So the way this truck's going to be configured right now, you basically have 34,000 pounds legal weight on the duals, 12,000 pounds on this lift axle, and then because it has the big fat tires up front, 20,000 pounds on the front axle. If you went super single or duals, you could have 20,000 pounds, which would give you 54,000 pounds on the back of the truck, and then whatever your front axle is. So you can get the same weight rating without having this be a third drive axle if you want. That, and with the lift axle up, the truck will turn a little sharper, especially in real life. And when you're off-road and you lift the lift axle so all the weight's on the drives, and you get traction. So yeah, I think I'm happy with the way that servo's mounted. Again, there won't be a ton of force, and I'll probably use, like I said, a really weak spring. It's just to keep this from bouncing too much. But definitely happy with the way that's going to be set up. I need to work on the front bumper a little bit. So that'll be the next part in this video, but steering axle, well, steerable lift axle, I'm going to throw some paint on the links, but that's kind of where it's going to be for now until I actually get a chance to drive the truck, use it, and see if this setup I'm going to be happy with or not, or if I make some tweaks to it. So let me figure out what I'm going to do on that front bumper, because I was going to do something and it didn't turn out the way I really liked. So now I need to figure out something else. So this is where I kind of stopped off at the bumper. This is my pull bar. I welded a piece of angle iron, add a little bit of an angle. That way I wasn't sticking too far out from front of the grill. And of course, naturally, it's a little short. But then I got to thinking, maybe I'll put chicken sticks on it. So, need to cut another piece of angle for here, tag it in place, and then I will have to get out a flap wheel and just grind the top of this really smooth so the body sits down flush on it, as it is sitting a little high right now.
Let me out! I'm stuck in your pocket.
I got a text message. But we'll come back here a little bit. So all the axles are mounted. I got the lift axle bolted in. So I'm going to mess with that bumper a little bit, and then we will get the truck bolted together and at least spin it around in the driveway for a little bit just to get it rolling. It's been a while since I've driven this truck. The snowplow, I still need some lights for. I'm thinking tonight I might take the whole plow frame off so I can take that truck out tomorrow and actually go rock crawling with the dump truck, just for fun. But let me get this the welder fired up and the bumper worked on here in a bit, and we'll come back. The bumper fully welded out. Yes, I know those welds are not very attractive. That's what the grinder's for. I never claimed to be a welder. I just can weld. So I'll schmooze all that stuff out with the grinder, get it looking a lot prettier. And then I have a ton of this key stock, but I need more for the trailer still. I think this piece is gonna get cut down and welded out here on the end for my chicken sticks. And they're called chicken sticks for the obvious reason that they're for people who don't know how to drive truck and need something to figure out where their bumper is. I think it'll actually look good on the truck and add a little more protection on the front end in case I let someone else drive the truck every now and then, which I kind of hope other people would be interested in driving the truck. So yeah, I'll get these tacked on after I get everything schmoozed out with the grinder. And this will get trimmed down. But that 1/8 inch, it's gonna be a fat chicken stick, that's for sure. It'll be more like a corner protector / chicken stick. But the bumper's actually coming out a little better than I had initially thought. So like I said, let me get it ground smooth, and then I'll get it on the truck and set the body on it, and you'll get a little better idea. I didn't quite cut that angle the same as that angle. That's the other reason for the chicken sticks, is that'll even it out, and I can put an end cap on each side, and I'm gonna have a lot of ground clearance, that's for sure. That's right, I also need to smooth that out. So let me get my headphones on and do a shitload of grinding, then we'll come back. Got those welded in, just need to weld up the end caps there and adjust those chicken sticks a little bit so they're both sticking up at the same angle, but I'm pretty happy with that. I'll also weld a piece in here, fill that hole up, and I think I'm gonna throw some paint on the bumper and then get it mounted up, because I'm actually really happy with the way this is coming out. It's not 100% perfect, but I built it myself, just eyeballing it. I'm not a super great welder or fabricator, but I'm happy with the overall look of the way the truck's coming out. I think that heavier duty bumper is going to look really good with that light bar flashing and all the axles on the ground. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to finish that bumper up. Then when we come back, I'll get the servo for the lift axle programmed into the beer, and maybe get some sound on it. And then we'll get this out in the driveway at least, and drive it around just a little bit. I know the lighting's not great in the office, but I'm filming the end of this video at 10 o'clock, so I've changed into my pajamas, so I know the bumper is kind of hard to see. Maybe let's shed a little more light. So I'm pretty pleased with how the bumper came out. This passenger side part of the wing is tucked in just a little bit further than I'd have liked. But I can always slice that weld and bend it out a little bit and tweak everything. Welded off the end caps. And I need to adjust first gear because I don't have first. I have second and third. Go ahead and turn the light bar on. Alright, well that's going to wrap up this video. The Savox servo is already annoying the tar out of me, even though the little hook came off the axle, so there's no weight on it whatsoever. Just constantly buzzing. The bumper will need a little tweaking, but I'm fairly happy with the way it came out. So some tweaking and the truck will be pretty much ready to go. I like the way the axle looks. Performance-wise, something's binding it up, so it isn't quite making full contact with the ground, or my holes didn't get perfectly straight, so it's not sitting correctly. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna have to mess with that. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I need to make that hydraulic tank set up and get servo wires ran for the trailer functions. So there'll be a little tweaking to go, but that's going to do it for this video. Hope everyone's having a good weekend, and we'll catch you in the next one.